Board. Thank you guys for coming tonight. Monday, October 17th. We do have a quorum. Thank you for who's here today. First call, a review of the meeting minutes of June 6. Have you guys had a chance to look at those meeting minutes?
Yeah,
Any questions or comments?
I make a motion to accept them.
I have a motion. Looking for a second. Second, thank you. All those in favor?
I wasn't here, so I won't vote.
Okay, thank you. Very good, thank you for that. Public hearings, conditional land use application for Ranger Construction to construct an office and maintenance facility along with a self-storage facility on 22 acres of land off Norwich Walk Road, assesses map 2, lot 9, in the rural residential land use district. I'd like to open that public hearing tonight. Any questions or any comments on the open public hearing tonight?
Take us through the plan.
Again, if you wish. Well, you want to do it, Bill? No. I should have Dwight do it. All right, Randy Butler with Dirigo Engineering. Been here a few times just to look over primarily our past efforts. We're at the subdivision itself. Now we're focusing down on just one of the parcels that DW LLC is retaining, and that is for the intent to move their construction business out to this site. Again, this is off Route 104, Norwich Walk Road. The main entrance will be on that proposed subdivision road, which is Reservoir Lane on the north side of the site. About a 22-acre parcel. Most of it will be used for the construction aspect of the site with a 100-foot by 180-foot maintenance garage up to that size. And then about a 6,000 square foot office space with parking associated with that. Gravel yards for lay-down areas and pipe storage, things of that, other materials. There's a wet pond on the site, which will double as fire pond, and we've worked with the fire chief to make sure we're going to meet the right requirements on that as far as the dry hydrant and the specifics of that. We'll work out with him to make sure we get the right fittings and screens and that sort of thing for the dry hydrant. It's set up so that as fire trucks come off Route 104, there'll be a turn-off lane, a widened shoulder there, so they can park right beside the dry hydrant. And if you remember, this part of what we talked about, it's been a year and a half, I think, is about this main entrance. Remember, the requirements, Fairfield ordinance requires that once you exceed 200 vehicle trips in and out, then you have to have a second means of entrance. And what we negotiated with MDOT and with you folks was to have, instead of two means of entrance, because MDOT doesn't like to have two means of entrance into the site, we negotiated to have a widened entrance, and they'll have to be divided by a curb. So each lane coming in for that first couple hundred feet will have enough room, enough space for two vehicles to pass. So if it has to, say for example, if there's an accident right within that first 400, 500, 600 feet, then this road that's on Ranger's property can double as a bypass road or emergency lane. So in case there is an accident in that first 600 feet between the two roads, we've got that covered. The other aspect that's going on here, in addition to the construction site itself, out to the easterly side of the property, kind of the back and east portion, is initially slated for about 100 storage units, but in the process, as we're going through DEP permitting, we decided just to make it larger. If he ever does want to go that large, up to 150 is what we've accommodated there. Not necessarily going to build that all out right away, but that's what it will allow if desired. There's detention ponds, other treatment devices required for stormwater management. All of this is going through DEP for site location of development permitting. There's a little bit of wetland disturbance associated with this portion, and that's being reviewed as well by DEP. I was told 3 weeks ago or a month ago that we would have a permit in hand by the end of September. Still don't have it in hand. I expect it any moment, but it's not quite in hand. So I'm hoping that if everything else looks good, we can just put that as a condition that That is a requirement for the site law permit as well as the NRPA permit. I welcome any questions.
I don't know if there's anyone from the public. There's no one from the public who's joined us.
Bill's here.
Got any complaints, Bill?
Not so far. Questions from the board? We're at a public hearing, so having no public hearing, having no Zoom, we'll give it a couple more minutes to make sure someone doesn't want to Zoom in.
Sure.
Did they alert you that someone might be calling? You have any?
They haven't told me if anyone's joined us. I did send letters to abutters. They've all been notified, and we
Okay.
did put it in the Sunday paper on the 9th.
We've been joining.
Okay.
We're joining.
Hi,
Hi.
would you like to participate and ask questions?
Yes, actually, we would.
Okay, so Tanya, go ahead.
Am I correct in understanding these homes that are going to be built are, how are they, how do I phrase the question? Are these homes going to be built as the property lots are required, are acquired?
Question asked about the homes. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, how many homes are in this first phase?
This-
Well, remember this that we're here for tonight, I'm happy to answer any other questions, but
Right.
this that we're here for tonight is
just-
just for the Ranger construction site.
Gotcha.
If you want to answer, if you don't mind me answering the question for the subdivision, what we're looking at for the subdivision is doing it in several phases. The first phase that we're looking to get approval for in the next few weeks, if we can, is for 10 lots, 10 house lots, and then 9 duplexes for a total of 18 units there. So that's the intent for phase 1.
Is it 55 older?
Are these going to be like 55 and older, kind of community area?
For the duplexes, yes.
The duplex?
But the homes will be, he's going to be selling the house lot, so that's whoever may buy a house lot, no restriction, age restriction on that.
Okay, so forgive me for joining in on this, but, so you were speaking about the construction of Ranger getting their company in there?
That's correct.
Okay, so may I direct a question to that? What are the hours of operation for Ranger Construction? Like, do they start at 7 in the morning, do they start at 6 in the morning, or do they end at like 5 at night?
6 to 5 generally.
6 to 5 generally.
6 a.m.
Okay,
6 a.m. to 5 p.m.
What type of trucks?
But first of all, excuse me, could we back up and could you give us your names and where you live?
oh, absolutely, yes. My name is John Wentworth, and my wife here is Tanya.
Okay.
And we on 40 Norwalk Road.
40 Norwich Walk, is that north of this site?
It's right next door.
It's like right on the edge of your site.
Okay, so it's north of the site, yes.
Yeah, I think you're on,
Yeah.
if I remember right, you're on the north side of the large parcel, correct?
Yes.
Right, up where,
very
I
good.
think where the proposed duplexes will be, if I'm correct.
Okay, so you're down by the duplex project, basically.
Well, that's another question. I'm not sure where exactly what is going in.
Have you seen,
That's another question that I have.
Have-
What's going in next to my house?
okay, have you seen the development maps or been to the town office at all?
I have a new map, yes, that just got sent to us. I also have, I believe it was one of the original maps. At first, I was told there's going to be a duplex next to my house. Then it looked like there was going to be a pond in a wetland area. And according to your newest map, I'm not sure. It looks like there's a road that's going to be abutting my property.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, what is going to be abutting my property?
Right, if I can clarify, that newest map is just strictly for the construction site. So this is at the south end of the property, so it's nowhere near, it's 1,000 or 1,500 feet away from your property, this plan that we're reviewing tonight. What is near your property will be the duplexes, and as you mentioned, there'll be some wet ponds that are closest to your property. I can't remember off the top of my head how far away we are, but I think we do plan on at least a 25-foot buffer, if I recall, around that perimeter. 25-foot wooded buffer to give you some screening.
That's not a heck of a lot of screening from what I'm seeing. They just ripped down the whole forest from what I'm seeing.
Okay, but keep in mind, again, tonight's review and the public hearing that you're attending tonight is for the Ranger Construction site, which is north of the existing, south of the existing entrance road, and you are 1,000 feet or more south of the existing entrance road.
North.
North of
No, excuse me, north, that is correct. So
Yeah.
what we're reviewing tonight isn't near your property.
Okay.
But we will be reviewing that, and hopefully within a few weeks, so that'd be the time to present your case more strongly, I guess, at that point.
Did you,
Oh, I'm not trying to make waves. I realize this is progress. I'm just curious as, what is going to be here and there so that I can make adjustments for myself and, my family.
oh, absolutely. That's why we
I'm
have,
really not trying to cause waves. I'm just looking for information myself.
super. I might suggest that since tonight we're reviewing the Ranger Construction site, which is a ways from your property, that you do spend some time at the town office and look at the whole map, and in a few weeks, you may get to comment on the development that is nearest your property, but tonight, we're quite a ways away from your property lines with this phase of the project.
Okay.
And there will be a public hearing on the project that is closest to your property, separate from tonight's proceedings.
All right. Appreciate that.
But as always, in public hearings, you absolutely are a butter, you absolutely have right to ask questions, and we will diligently answer all of your questions to make sure you're comfortable that the project isn't going to hurt your property values or affect you.
That's fine. I appreciate that. And I'm just looking for information here, and I apologize if I jumped on the wrong bandwagon.
No,
But
no problem.
I still do have a few, questions, and yes, they do mainly concern the home building aspect.
Okay, and we will jump ahead to that. What questions do you have about the home building project, which isn't part of this?
Okay.
I agree. All right, I understand.
But what questions do you have about the home building projects?
Oh, well,
We can just address it another time.
we can address those at another time, and we will do the research on it. I'll get a better look at the map. I was just curious mainly about the project and stuff like that. Water, sewer, power, how it's going to impact not just myself, but the people on this road, those kind of questions.
Okay. That is not serviced by public sewer, so it's private septic systems like you have. It is not serviced by public water, so it's private wells like what you have. So that's the water and sewer aspects of it. And I think Bill had mentioned earlier that he's probably just going to sell lots in the next phase and not be involved with the construction, just selling lots in an approved subdivision.
All right. That sums up a lot of my questions right off. All right.
But again, please feel free to contact Nicole and go to the town office and look at the entire map and the entire project, and especially what's close to your property, which would help you understand, again, what's happening, when it's happening, how it's happening. And again, there will be another project, another meeting in the planning board, and there'll be another public hearing addressing the property closest to you, probably in a few weeks.
That sounds good. I'll do a little more homework, a little more research. I appreciate that.
Great, well, thank you for calling in, appreciate it. Very good. Anybody else do we know? I'm glad to hear from an abutter, because a well-informed abutter is an ally for you.
Don't know if there's anyone else on Crossroads.
Okay, we'll let it go a couple more minutes and see. And obviously...
There's no one else here.
Thank you, Chad. No one else is present.
No one else present. Okay, moving right along, I'd like to close the public hearing on this aspect of the development project and move on to the next agenda item, item 4, unfinished business, and we have none. Item 5, new business. A, conditional use permit application for Ranger Construction to construct an office and maintenance facility along with a self-storage facility on 22 acres of land off Norris Walk Road on Assessors Map 2, Lot 9, in the Rural Residential Land Use District. Discussion and decision. So this is discussion for the board. Any questions or comments from you guys relative to this part of the project? And again, office, maintenance facility, and self-storage on 22 acres. Randy has spoke about the wetlands pond, and you can see on your maps, guys, that road coming in off the entrance road, which services that development area.
I did speak with Perry Waltz when he called to inform us he was not well, and he has reviewed the documents, and he's in support of the project with no concerns
Okay.
as submitted.
Okay. Can we, how about some of the conditions? In reading prior to the meeting, there was a discussion about having a road around the buildings for fire protection. And the chief was going to address that issue?
He did send an addendum, he did send his letter, so you
Okay.
guys should have all gotten an email from the fire chief. That he has reviewed the plan, there's gravel around the building, he can get his fire equipment around the structure.
Okay, so
No problem.
he's content with that.
He is, you also got a letter from the police chief that he's reviewed it for security, and he has no concerns as it's submitted. He can effectively supply police and security to the site with the gates secure as they are.
Very good.
Yep. And you did get another letter in front of you, request for waiver.
See that? And that's for 7.112B, requirement for the dike around the proposed above-ground fuel storage tanks.
Right,
So the tanks are dual-walled. Does that mean they don't need any other containment?
correct. I did call DEP, the State Fire Marshal Office that issues the permit for above-ground storage tanks, and they told me that the dual-wall tanks meet the criteria of
Okay.
containment.
Okay. Any questions or comments, guys, about that? How about the other conditions of approval? The pinning, the surveying, any questions about frontage requirements at this point?
So they have the frontage on their private road.
Correct.
Yeah, the appropriate frontage. for
And
their
this
business.
road is private, not to be turned over to the town?
All the roads within this commercial development, correct.
Okay. Is there a note on the plan accordingly?
I don't know that there is.
Okay, there's supposed to be a note on the plan, especially the Mylar to be signed,
Yes, we can add that,
that is going to say that.
right. I guess I didn't, I'd be happy to put it on there. I guess the reason I didn't, because this is all on private property.
Gotcha.
So that's
Well,
the reason I did not do it, but I'm happy to do that if you want to clarify it for...
But on the top of the map, we're showing the main road that is
Okay.
part of the private property.
Yep, correct.
So all,
That will eventually be turned over to the
Right,
town.
right. the
That road only, which the note should
Right.
clarify.
and the only other maybe request for waiver that they should put out there right now is the utilities. Our ordinance says where they can get utilities underground, but on this site, has a lot of ledge outcropping, so they cannot.
Okay.
So I don't know if our ordinance says if they can't practically do it, so I don't think they have to ask for a waiver because the topography doesn't allow for it.
Okay.
But that's up to you guys if you want to.
I just, to protect Bill, so where there's a waiver needed for us to sign off on, I just soon have that waiver in place, so someone later doesn't hold him accountable for such a thing. So a note on a Mylar is a huge help later.
We'll put it in the findings when you take a vote on it, so to waive that requirement.
Very good. What else are we looking for waivers tonight?
I think that was it. I think that they met, I don't know of any others, do you?
No. We had, I think, at least 4 conditions. One of your emails today outlined the 5, I think it was 5 conditions that you listed, which, if everything is approved, those should go in your minutes.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
No?
Hearing none, I take a motion. And again, we're only dealing with
This section here.
this section
Oh.
here, disregard the city street at the top.
Yep.
There'll be a note and a waiver for that, so it's just the,
Do we need something stating that the town is not responsible for the roads in this section before we...
we can cover that with findings of facts and/or
Oh, okay.
You can move on to findings, and then you can list that as,
At
you
the
know, a
end.
condition that the roads within the Ranger construction site will
Okay.
always remain private
Right.
roads.
Okay.
Okay.
And again, those are important facts because later on, someone else may say, gee, how come the town's not plowing the road or whatever.
Right.
But if it's clear on the Mylar or clear in the finding of fact or clear on the conditions of approval, then that's just not a non-issue. We need to
Okay.
be really complete about that. So again, it's just the, construct the office maintenance facility and maintenance facility and the self-storage
Yep.
is what we're dealing with tonight on map 2, lot 9.
I make a motion to accept them and to move to finding the facts.
Have a motion to accept?
To move to findings first?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's move to finding of fact. Here we go. Ranger Construction DW LLC, file date 10/17/22, lot off Norris Rock Road, part of map 2, lot 9, private road, Ranger Way. Pre-application meeting was on 6/6/22, planning board meeting, the project was introduced. I'm going to skip the items that are not applicable, and I'm going to read only the applicable items. A site plan to scale showing at a minimum the location of existing and proposed structures and distance from lot lines, water bodies, water supply, and sewage disposal facilities submitted to the planning board with the application sheet S5. A AHE-200 is if a subsurface wastewater treatment system is used, and we've seen those soil profiles. If the market value of the project will exceed $80,000, a copy of the plans and specifications for construction shall be required. Conceptual building size and locations are shown on the site plan. Engineered specifications for construction will be submitted for the local building permit application prior to start of construction. Existing topographical contours are shown on the plan S5 by Derigo Engineering. Proposed grading of contour intervals not greater than 5 feet, and they're on the plan, again, S5. Site improvements as shown on the overall site plan, S5. Pedestrian and travel ways and parking areas, travel ways and parking are shown again on S5. Landscaping and buffer areas as shown on the plan are currently existing. No changes proposed. Some areas are 25-foot screening buffer areas, and some areas are 50-foot screening buffer areas. Stormwater and erosion control structures as shown on S5 through S10. Private water, private septic, and power lines, and outside installations of any machinery or materials. Existing lighting proposed are not shown on the plan. Electrical above or below ground not shown on the plan. Septic tanks and field are shown on the Plan S5. Proposed well location is not shown on the plan. An estimate of vehicle trips to be generated by the development and modifications to the public roads which may be necessary to absorb traffic, as described in memo from Randy Butler and proposed by Ranger Construction Site Development, including the storage units, is calculated to generate a total of 114 trips per day. MDOT entrance permit was originally approved for 285 trips per day, and that will be part of a conditional approval when we get to the end. Waiting for MDOT approval for the change of the commercial lot and decrease the residential, to be set as a condition of approval. A statement from the fire chief that suitable provisions for fire protection have been included, submitted with the application. The project meets the requirements of the land use ordinance. A list of names and addresses of landowners within 200 feet of the property boundaries submitted with the application. Letters to abutters were mailed on October 7th, 2022, notifying of tonight's public hearing on this application via Zoom meeting link. Legal notice in the Morning Sentinel on Sunday, October 9th, 2022. An analysis of potential environmental impacts, including effects on surface and groundwater bodies, air quality, and wildlife resources. If any potential negative impacts are identified, a management strategy consistent with the performance standards of the ordinance and state and federal regulations must be prepared by a qualified professional. As shown in the stormwater plan, they have applied to the Maine DEP for a Natural Resource Protection Act Tier 1 permit for this site, and they have applied for a DEP to the DEP for a site location of development permit for this site and a DEP permit by rule for this site. They will also apply for state fire marshal for the above storage of flammable combustible liquids. An erosion control plan prepared by a registered professional engineer as shown on the plan S5 through S10. A stormwater management plan prepared by a registered professional engineer. See Stormwater Management Plan Sheet S5 through S10 by Derigo Engineering. A statement regarding the use, storage, and disposal of any dangerous, toxic, special, or hazardous waste, whether solid, liquid, or gaseous, and special measures available to deal with them in an appropriate fashion. Dangerous, toxic, or special or hazardous waste that is generated and stored in this site in the maintenance garage will be properly stored and regularly disposed of with a licensed hazardous waste disposal company. A submitted spill prevention control and countermeasures plan. Findings. The development will not create unsafe or unhealthy conditions within the neighborhood in which it is located and shall not create or exacerbate effects upon the neighboring properties. This proposed business and self-storage unit facility project has been designed to be in compliance with the requirements of the Fairfield Land Use Board Ordinance. See letter and recommendations from Stephen Ambrose, Acoustics, Environmental Sound and Industrial Noise Control for a good acoustic neighbor policy for noise control measures.
So that was included. So he has like a little punch list of
Okay.
noise control measures, which they've submitted to us as part of their site location and development.
Okay.
So he has recommendations of what they do to keep the noise down at the, because in our ordinance, it says 7 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. is when they can make noise. So from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. One of his recommendations, like no slamming of the tailgate, which I'm sure you don't allow to slam tailgates, that gets expensive. Yeah. So,
And that would be from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m.
no, 9:30 p.m.
to 7.
to 7 a.m.
Thank you.
Is quiet time. Well, is noise. So they, right. But he's,
Okay. Thank you. Item 2, development will not create or add to traffic congestion at or below level D of service as defined and will not create unsafe traffic movements on public roads. As described in the MDOT driveway entrance permit application, The proposed development is calculated to generate a total of 39 trips during peak hour. This will not result in creating of traffic congestion to the surrounding area. The proposed development does not require a Maine DOT traffic movement permit below 50 trips at peak hour. MDOT permit number 29955 dated July 2, 2021. Waiting to hear back from David Allen of DOT, traffic engineer, if the change of adding the self-storage units is acceptable as they are proposing. What happens if that is not acceptable?
I can't imagine it won't be acceptable. We'll
Okay.
have to scale back, because remember this, the original permit was for the entire subdivision,
Got it.
right? 40 units is what
Got
we
it.
originally designed it as. We're already scaling that back to just 25 units. So I can't imagine that there's any situation where it would not be acceptable. If something comes up, we'll have to address it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we need to be specific on these conditional,
And remember, our subdivision, I assume that we have to address that in the next phases of the subdivision. right?
Gotcha.
Because the first phase is only 10 units plus the duplexes. So even if we were built out, I don't think it's going to be an issue. Certainly
Okay.
we'll address it if necessary.
very good. Item 3, the development will not result in undue reduction of air and water quality or wildlife habitat and will not cause undue flooding or soil erosion. The proposed project will not result in the reduction of air and water quality or wildlife habitat and will not cause undue flooding or soil erosion. See stormwater set the plans S5 through S10 for the project design and erosion control measures to be used. Item 4, the development will not, to the greatest extent feasible, the development will not, to the greatest extent feasible, preserve historic or prehistoric or archaeological resources. There is no known identified historic, prehistoric, or archaeological resources on this site. 5, the development will not cause an undue strain on public facilities or services, including public roads, water supply, sewage disposal, solid waste systems, police, educational, or other services. The project will not cause an undue strain on public facilities or services. This project does not require public water or public sewer.
This might be a good place for you guys to state for the record that all, you could add a sentence, all roads within the development area, within the construction lot, to remain private.
That is correct, and the statement should be, all roads within the private development will remain private, with the exception of the entrance road section shown on the plan. Item 6, the applicant has sufficient financial and technical capacity to complete the development. They have provided a July 2, 2021 letter of credit from Key Bank as proof of financial capacity. Item 7, the development is consistent with the Fairfield Comprehensive Plan and in compliance with state and federal law, as well as ordinances, rules, and regulations of the town, including the performance standards of the land use ordinance, unless the board acts to waive the said standards. The development is consistent with the Fairfield Comprehensive Plan, and the site plan has been designed to be in compliance with the town and state requirements. Conditions of approval. Item 1, Ranger Construction, DW LLC must obtain a Tier 1 Wetlands Alteration Natural Resource Protection Act permit from the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, Bureau of Land Services, or Resources. Item 2, Ranger Construction, DW LLC must obtain a site location of development permit from the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, Bureau of Land Resources. Item 3, Ranger Construction, DW LLC must obtain a Maine Fire Marshal above-ground storage, flammable, and combustible liquids permit for the above-ground fuel tanks. And item 4, Ranger Construction must obtain approval of the change in the entrance permit from the Maine DOT, Maine Department of Transportation, MDOT, for the addition of self-storage units. Are there any other conditions of approval?
I had 2 waiver requests that need to be added also. The waiver 1 was to waive the dike requirement, if you want to add that.
Okay,
And waiver 2 would be to allow electrical overhead
okay,
instead of the ordinance required below grade.
okay. The 2 additional waivers is the dike requirement for the fuel tanks, that is being waived according to the State Fire Marshal's office. It meets their regulations. And electrical overhead service permitted because of the ledge conditions, and it is not required to be underground service for this private project. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen, for waivers or conditions of approval?
No, I got one question, now it's the right time to ask.
No, it's always the right time.
Because this is considered phase 1, correct?
No,
Or phase,
no, this is not, this is separate from the subdivision.
right, but you talked about the traffic. And because you're scaling it back and only doing the duplexes in those few houses, it cuts back on the traffic. But what happens if you go to that phase where you add all the other houses?
Well, we'll have to address that, yeah.
But will the
Essentially,
road
yeah.
be wide enough and everything built now?
No, good questions. Go ahead, Randy.
Right, yeah, we should have an answer within the next few days. I've tried several times getting a hold of Dave Allen, he's the contact with MDOT. I'm suspecting he's on vacation, out hunting a moose, or who knows
Duck
what.
hunting.
Yeah, what's that?
He's duck hunting.
Is he really? Okay, so you know him? Okay. So I'm waiting on him. We should have his response well before any construction starts here, so I don't foresee any issue with it.
But the concern or questions asked are valid to the fact that the main entrance road has been designed for the entire project.
Right.
And this loop road coming off to the private section, that road design has been, and the split entrance set up for the entire project on the initial design.
Correct. Yes,
Okay, so.
that's correct.
Concerns we may have. Now, worst case scenario, this wasn't designed for the balance of the traffic in other phases, future phases. They have to modify and fix it, as well as get the DOT curb cut permit for traffic counts. And, yeah, they're still responsible in the subsequent phases to meet the ordinance and to meet state regulations, including DOT.
Right.
It's a good question, and it's clear that we're coming off that entrance road for a private project, and I suspect it's for Bill to get started on his home projects ahead of the rest of the development. And again, we talked phasing, we suggested phasing. If this fast tracks you to get started and get going on what you want to do, that's why we're here to work with you and make those suggestions and recommendations. And thank you for bringing this in a phase that we can see and understand that meets your needs, and you can start tracking and going on your projects, while the rest of it, I'm sure, will come together in a future submission. Anything else, gentlemen, on this phase, on this first section of this project? We've been through finding of fact, we have the...
You need to take a vote on your findings.
Absolutely. We've been through finding of fact, we've taken the conditions approvals and the waivers. If there's nothing else, I'd call for a vote on this phase of the project. Take a motion.
I make a motion to accept the finding of facts with the conditions that we had mentioned and written down. I don't have them written down here.
No?
So there are 4 conditions of approval and 2 waivers granted.
Very good. Is there anything else? Are we missing anything else in those waivers or conditions? I have a motion. I take a second. Second, thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. Patience pays off, so
So I'll get that cleaned up, get it signed, and get it over to you guys, hopefully tomorrow.
Can I I assume for the last, this is the item on your agenda?
We have one conditional permit extension and just some minor things, but go
Okay.
ahead, Randy.
I don't know if it's appropriate or not to have a discussion. At some point, we want to have a thorough discussion with Public Works and so forth. One of the issues that we're having on Phase 1 of the subdivision, so
Okay.
just jumping away from this, jumping onto Phase 1, is what's the best time in the interest of all parties, including the town's interest, as far as paving of the project? Bill's already set out to get a bond to make sure, that everything is covered and so forth, so we'll have the money kind of secured, so to speak. But one of the ways that we're looking at it, I think it might be in the best interest of the town, is to try to delay the paving a reasonable amount of time, not have the town won't take over the roads until the roads are paved. But say, for example, we've got 10 house lots that we're trying to build, as well as the duplexes. It's going to be a fair amount of truck traffic across this. And we don't know how soon all the duplexes will be finished, don't know how soon the house lots will be finished, for example. Perhaps it might be a couple of years before we have enough houses sold that it can be turned over to the town, right? And as you're aware, the more truck traffic we have on that, the more that's beating on brand-new pavement. So I guess we'd like to have some agreement, understanding with the town about what would be in the best interest of everybody. I think our desire would be to delay paving as long as practical, so that the more homes that we have built, the fewer concrete trucks you're going to be traveling across them and so forth. So the longer we can wait to turn that over to the town, the better product the town is going to have. Because one of the discussions, I think, that Bruce Williams had, he was kind of thinking, okay, we don't want to wait too long on pavement, because he was thinking maybe try to have a deadline to have it paved, say, for example, by a year from now, by, mid-October, which is kind of falls in line with MDOT's requirements. And that's all well and good, but again, if it's another year or two before he's got enough homes to be able to turn it over, well, that's just that much more truck traffic you've got on a freshly paved road. So I guess that's just discussion. We don't need to answer it tonight, but maybe just open it up for people to be thinking about, so that when we do come in a couple of weeks, we can kind of like to have that nailed down, I guess, and have some understanding with the town council, with you folks, so that we can kind of make sure we're on the right track with all of that.
A lot of that makes sense, but keep in mind that the town never wants to get stuck with a gravel road that isn't paved yet. So somewhere early in the game, we would like a timeline that says there's either a performance bond put up to guarantee the pavement,
Right.
So that if you want to delay that, that's great. There's some money, there's a bond there to complete it. But there's a fine line between selling 9 out of 10 homes before the paving's done, or 1 or 2 homes are under contract, some bond money for guarantee of paving. We never want to get stuck on a gravel road, and we've had situations in the past where some lady shows up and, hey, when are you going to pave my road? The lots were sold on a road that hadn't been built yet. That puts the town in a very interesting position.
I already have the bond, I thought I sent it to you.
Right, yeah, we're all set with doing the bond. The only question that he had on the bond is, I think you had sent it, and you had it for 2 years, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we're trying to iron out. Okay, is that
The bond
realistic?
specifically says right on it that it goes into effect in a certain amount of time, protects you and all that. Like, we gotta come up with a time.
Right, so there's no
Right.
question about doing the bond, there's no question that it will be paved before it's turned over to the town. It's just, I think it's in the best interest of everybody here in the room if we can delay that paving.
And that's fine, as long as there's a guarantee there to pave these roads, that's fine.
Okay.
But I would defer to the town attorney as well.
Right, it's the
as
town council.
That's correct.
Right, so that bond went to the council members. So
Okay,
that
did that get passed
conversation,
along?
they're all the decision makers, right?
Okay.
The planning board follows the ordinance,
Yep,
and basically, they take direction from the council. from
okay,
there.
This is, the town won't accept the road until it is paved, right?
That is correct.
That is correct.
Right.
yeah.
So, I mean, be more or less up to you fellows, I guess. How soon you want it.
Yeah, to some, right, and to some extent, it's an unknown, right? If he could sell all the houses within the first year, I'm sure he'd be happy to pave as soon as possible, but if.
Okay. Again, that will come further as we look at this next phase you're speaking of.
Right.
And/or the town attorney and the town council will have some input on how that goes. But it makes
Okay.
sense not to have to lay that money out up front, not to have to pave all those roads up front. We're talking about 2,000 feet of road?
Yeah, roughly. Yep.
Okay, 2,100 feet, I think it
Yeah.
was on the estimate.
Yep.
That's fine, that's a coordination kind of thing. And again, you have to maintain and take care of the road, repair, replace, plow, whatever it needs up until that time. So I'm sure at some point you want to get off the maintenance of that road. Okay, great, let's get the final paving done. Okay, the town accepts it. Okay, they're plowing it. So there's a normal process there. Okay, and we gladly will work with you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you,
Thank you.
folks.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you very
you.
much.
Yep.
You say lobster?
I did. Boy.
Next item, B, under new business, conditional use permit, COND 22022-02, Ed Bessie Lumber Products LLC, issued on 6/7/2022, a request for a 180-day extension of time to commence construction on the permit, discussion and decision. They're just asking if you've seen his letter for an extension of time to start their project. Any discussion on that issue? Okay, I'm sure with their work and all kinds of things, finding a contractor, all those neat things, I'm sure they experienced some delays, and we can be patient for that. I take a motion on that item. If
I'd make
there's
a
no-
motion, we extend the,
Got a motion to extend?
Second?
Got a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote. All those in favor, thank you very much. Item 6, items by public, clerk, and members.
I don't know if there's any public still on with us.
There is no one.
No one, thank you.
Thank you, we got a voice from the skies.
So no public. Clerk, I just have, their application is still pending for final for subdivision to come forward. And right now, there's been a few other applications in the wings, but nothing firm.
Okay,
People haven't come forward.
very good. Item C, members, discussion of the planning board bylaws, section 4.2 agendas.
Oh, I think that, I'm sorry, that was probably me
Okay.
forgetting to remove it from a previous agenda. Because you already had that discussion.
We did have
Yeah.
that discussion, but I thought it was coming back.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, my fault.
And for the ones that weren't here, it was just the January memo that was received in May that talks about keeping the planning board agendas on task and staying on topic, and not wasting a lot of time, not sidetracking, but as always, anything of relevance to from our members is important to us as well.
but there's no problem with making a solution to a problem, changes about the ordinance.
That's right.
As long as we can't vote on it at that meeting, gotta wait till the next meeting.
Correct. Item 7, adjournment of the planning board meeting. Take a motion. Or we can stay here.
No.
I'd like to make one note.
Please.
Okay.
You all might know, I think about a month ago, right after our last meeting, the Fairfield Water Concerned Citizens Group
Yep.
was awarded a plaque for all the work that we've done over the past 2 years
Wow.
by Defend Your, for Health in Portland, a nonprofit organization.
Wow,
And it's hanging out here in the lobby so anyone from the town wants to walk through, they can see it.
for your work, good job.
It's not an individual award, it's a whole group award.
Yep.
And Michelle thought it belonged in the community center.
Oh,
so.
absolutely.
Nice.
Very good. Well, your efforts are obviously paying off if we're getting some plaques out of it anyway. A little clean water will go a long ways as well, right?
I had one thing on the, like a planning board suggestion, like the water situation out in Fairfield Center. Who's responsible for seeing that people know that you can't do certain things out there with, I mean, you can't buy a 10-acre lot and have a vegetable garden and sell food, right?
That's a good point, and so,
Should that be something that we put in the ordinance or something that town
Well-
council makes a,
we are enforcing a land use ordinance, and land use, and to my knowledge, the Department of, DEP is very active in doing the soils and water testing. So they have tested all the water in Fairfield Center. They provided us with soils tests on most of our properties up there. They won't do the private ones yet. I've had to pay for private ones done on other properties. But the inland fisheries, 3 weeks ago, contacted all the large landowners and wanted to start shooting deer and turkeys for testing. And they did about 3 weeks ago. They shot 30 or 25 or 30 deer at night. And I asked them, will we get complaints from the neighbors if you guys are shooting at night?
Yeah.
And he said, no, there'll be no complaints. I said, how do you figure that? He said, well, first of all, we have really good night vision equipment, and we have silencers on all our sharpshooter guns. So you won't see or hear anything. So they did shoot these deer. We expect a report before deer hunting season to focus on the areas in Fairfield Center where the worst contamination has been found, to advise the landowners on the consumption of turkeys and deer. And I think it's real important that people know that certain areas of town, like the Culver Road and North, don't have any spread problems, but the farmlands do, and in some surprising locations, the soils are testing relatively low. 19 to 29 parts per trillion, and which is allowing them to grow corn again on some of these properties. So the only farmer in Fairfield Center now, Egypt Dosty, has planted 1,000 acres of corn this year. But the testing tells him that he can't take the corn stalks. He has to use a columbine to go through the cornfields and take the ears of corn only. And the ears of corn are removed from the husk with this machine, and he has a couple of them up there, and they chop the corn cob and kernels only, which are testing clean, and he's feeding that to his cows. So that's good information, that they're finding crops and things that they can grow on this property, because initially we were told that you can't use this property for anything. So they did tell me that they're going to send out an advisory which would be the end of October, that tells about the extent of contamination in the turkeys and deer, to better advise the landowners on consumption and how many meals. And they've been doing this for 30 years in the Kennebec River. You can only eat one brown trout every 90 days unless you're pregnant, and then you can have one brown trout every 2 years, okay, or something.
what I was thinking of, what about potential buyers? If somebody's selling a plot of land, does anybody tell the buyer that, we have this situation here?
I don't believe that shows up in a normal disclosure of a real estate sale. However, anybody buying property, it's buyer beware, should ask for water tests, which is normal in a closing. What's your water test? And they should be looking for PFAS in those water tests. You used to be, if you bought property 20 years ago, you were looking for nitrates and nitrites and manure contamination. But now they're obviously looking for PFAS. So it's a good point, because we see little vegetable gardens here and there,
Yep.
and we don't know if those vegetable gardens are grown on clean soil or not.
Yeah, and somebody may be down the end of the street selling vegetables.
Correct. So it's a good point. I don't know how much. I do believe that the state is going to come up with these advisories on consumption of game animals, and at the same time, they've got enough soils information to also put advisories out in areas that you shouldn't be consuming the fruit, the vegetables that are grown, especially the leafy vegetables is what they're mostly concerned about.
It just seems to me that there should be some way that people know that this situation is here, and
You're
when they
absolutely,
might have a lot of land and they plant a garden and sell crops at the end of the street, and
you're absolutely correct, and,
seems like it should be somebody's
well,
job to...
that's,
We've been trying to get the word out to everybody in Fairfield. The
Yeah.
problem is, a lot of people that claim they don't read the newspaper or watch the news, so they never heard anything about it. Yeah, you can't, you can only do so much.
No, it's like be somebody, well...
I mean, the
sell
state
house-
is really-
Sell a house and get out of here, we'll go to Florida.
Can you live with you have to live with yourself.
Yeah.
now, keep in mind that to try to find clean water anywhere, or clean soils anywhere, is going to be difficult today, because Kennebec Water District, for example, city water, has claimed that they have 6 parts per billion in their Kennebec water coming out of China Lake.
Now, the Kennebec Water District is getting pricing for a filter system to do all their water. They've already out in the process doing that.
Okay,
So they are putting in a system once they find out the cost and which one will do the best job.
correct. And that will be passed on to the consumers, I'm sure.
So it has to be.
Right. So, that's a good point.
No, it's just like I was thinking, like in certain areas, you can't have a horse or something, but if you have a horse out there and he's eating the grass, is
Right.
that good for the horse, or should somebody let them know that, hey, you shouldn't have that horse out there?
Well, we...
Horse owners are pretty up to speed with that already.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, early we were told, our 200 acres was absolutely useless. Now, not only are we growing corn for Egypt Dorsey, and I'm not getting paid anything, but it's helping him have crops for his cows, but also, and they're checking the turkeys for this as well. But the horse guys have come up and cut hay for free. So they're not eating these horses, and they're trying to target low concentration of chemical areas to feed their horses. But again, it's not consumable, so we're finding, again, what levels are dangerous to people, and horses and cows, they can seem to eat the corn that's planted in lower chemical fields. So there's a much more study to do, there's much more information, there's advisories coming out, which is good for the hunters, and I hope that what you're saying may be, and it's on the DEP website, the maps and the test results of entire Fairfield Center. So if you were thinking of, buying property up there, it'd behoove you to go to the DEP
Either
website.
that, if you have, in this zone here,
Yep.
this thing isn't allowed when you...
Whether they get that far, but I do know they're doing extensive study, and they're spending a ton of money, and they're doing a ton of testing on the animals to find out.
Are they testing fish also?
Not to my knowledge, but the fish, which are downstream from, which is Fish Brook at the bottom of Western Avenue, which runs into Messalonsky Stream in Waterville, which goes Messalonsky down through, those waterways are totally contaminated. So I think that advisories are out there not to consume those fish in those areas. Whether it's publicized or whether it's going to come in a written advisory, I think DEP is working on that, and it's all good information. And again, what your group is doing, trying to advise and educate people on contamination is huge. And again, we're the land use board, so this is land use, okay? But we're learning a lot of things. That's a good point, and I think that hopefully the next meeting, we have this advisory out, and it kind of answers those questions. What can you consume from these areas, is what it really amounts to. And be it vegetables or deer or turkeys. So no, that's a real good topic of discussion. So we will, I'm sure, continue to follow on that. Anything else from anybody? If not, I take a motion to adjourn. Motion.
Everybody second?
I'll second.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. The motion second, all those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.